The night Rome burned, the sky opened like a furnace door. Walls glowed, statues wept metal, and streets became rivers carrying furniture, memories, and bodies in the same current. People ran with their gods under their arms and lost both at the next corner. On a hill above the flames, an emperor stood very still, listening to the disaster as if it were music he had commissioned. The crack of timber, the whistle of updraft, the human notes that waver when a city realizes it is mortal. They said he sang while the city screamed. Maybe he did. Maybe he only wished he had. The truth is simpler and worse. He loved applause more than he loved Rome. But this story does not begin with fire. It begins with a mother who forged a crown out of vengeance and a boy who mistook performance for power, until power asked him to bleed for it.
The boy wasn't raised, he was assembled. Agrippina the Younger returned from exile with a smile sharpened to a weapon and a plan that weighed more than grief. She did not soothe her son, she calibrated him. She taught him posture before ethics, cadence before conscience. Servants learned that his silences were rehearsed and his laughter arrived on cue. Even his tenderness had choreography. Love, in that palace, was a performance note in the margin of a script. Rome whispered that Agrippina could bend marble by looking at it. She walked corridors like a general reviewing a battlefield, counting doors, measuring faces, mapping loyalties as if drawing a siege, because she was. Nero discovered early that approval came with instructions attached. Smile here, speak there, bow now. He learned the oldest lesson of power. People forgive cruelty sooner than hesitation. He watched his mother turn gossip into leverage and weakness into currency. He understood he was both her masterpiece and her hostage. At night he dreamed of stages, not councils, of crowns of laurel, not laurel decrees. It would be years before he understood the difference, and years before he tried to erase it with blood. Claudius, cautious and tired, adopted the boy and set a clock ticking he could not hear. Titles lengthened Nero's name like chains disguised as garlands. Each honor tightened the leash even as it glittered. Agrippina curated every glance that reached the emperor. She engineered meetings, stalled enemies, fed Rome the rumor that destiny had already chosen. The palace learned a new gravity. Objects fell toward Agrippina. Nero studied his reflection until he could wear it like armor. In mirrors, he practiced compassion, curiosity, modesty, a gallery of masks fitted with surgical precision so no seam showed at the edge. The city wanted the future to arrive young. It always does. Senators began to speak of stability with the careful joy of gamblers who believe the dice are loaded in their favor. Behind curtains, poisoners rehearsed excuses, and apothecaries pretended not to understand the difference between medicine and method. Nero smiled the way she taught him to smile, like a promise that required no oath, and felt the trap close as if it were a warm cloak. A plate of mushrooms, a pause in the conversation, a cough that did not finish. Claudius folded into a silence Rome recognized, the kind that means new orders will arrive shortly. The official letters spoke of fate and exhaustion. The unofficial letters traveled faster, naming the ingredient everyone pretended not to taste. No one said Agrippina aloud. They didn't need to. Nero watched courtiers audition grief. Heads bowed at the correct angle, Voices softened to the pitch of respectful relief. Even sorrow has protocol when power changes rooms. The Praetorian Guard saluted. Senators congratulated themselves for being present at history. The boy's hand lifted, and an empire obeyed. In that precise instant, Nero felt two things land on his shoulders: the empire and his mother's hand. He wore both. One would prove heavier than the other, and the lighter one would demand the greater price. At first, the city allowed itself to hope. Youth looks like mercy when hearts are tired. With Seneca writing the words and Burrus enforcing the pauses, Nero sounded like reason given a trumpet. Taxes eased, judgment softened. The empire inhaled without flinching. In theaters, he sat among the people and pretended to be ordinary with a performer's grace. Nero hungered for applause the way thirsty men want rain. Too much, too often, from any sky that will give it. He found the stage more honest than the Senate, because audiences either clap or they don't. For a little while, beauty masked appetite. Populace and prince exchanged smiles across a distance they chose not to measure. But applause, like any drug, builds tolerance. He needed higher doses. The city had only so many hands. The moment hope thinks it can relax, history reminds it to check the exits. There was another air, breathing quietly like a loaded question. Britannicus, Claudius his son. Legality wrapped him like a second skin. Legitimacy glinted off him like light off a blade. The choice came dressed as dinner. A cup moved from tray to hand. A taste turned bitter. A throat closed as politely as a door. The room froze, then thawed into the choreography of accident. Guests learned the safety of looking at the wrong thing. Seneca's face went still. Burrus's jaw worked once, then stopped. Even the candles seemed to understand how not to flicker at the wrong time. Nero watched them watching him, and discovered how quickly horror converts into obedience if you provide the audience a plausible line to repeat later. From that night forward, he understood that power is not secured by removing enemies. It is secured by removing alternatives. And across the table, in the space where a boy had been, something else took his seat. The certainty that applause could be purchased with fear. Power had crowned Nero, but Agrippina still wore the scepter. Ministers reported to him with eyes flicking toward her. Senators addressed their speeches to her shadow. Even the guard shifted uneasily when her gaze swept the room. She did not whisper suggestions. She delivered instructions. Do this, sign that, receive him, dismiss her. Her son was the vessel. She was the hand that poured. The empire understood. Rome had two rulers, one official and one undeniable. Nero bristled in silence. He was emperor in marble and ceremony, yet still a boy in his mother's grip. He practiced cruelty in small doses, mockery, coldness, distance, testing the limits of defiance. But Agrippina did not flinch. She had birthed him, and in her mind, she still owned him. The court began to murmur. Was Nero Rome's Caesar, or merely Agrippina's mask? Every rumor tightened the leash she held over him. Nero looked into polished bronze mirrors and saw her face inside his own reflection. And one night, the thought crystallized sharp as glass. If I want to be emperor, I must first be orphan. He planned her death like theater, every detail rehearsed, every outcome plotted. Agrippina was invited to sea, treated with honor, seated on a vessel built for betrayal. Its hull had been weakened, its timbers rigged to collapse under command. As the ship drifted into open water, the signal was given. Beams snapped, planks cracked, and the seas surged in as if summoned. Screams tore the night. Sailors pretended to panic. Death approached disguised as accident. But Agrippina fought the script. She clawed her way through darkness, swimming with the rage that kept her body afloat. Men reached to pull her under, but she struck them aside. She did not drown. She emerged, a dripping specter, alive, unbroken. Word spread faster than tide. Agrippina lives. The city gasped. She had cheated death, and that survival was more terrifying than murder itself. Rome whispered that the gods themselves were on her side. She sent a message to her son. I am safe. It was more than a statement of survival. It was a curse. Nero trembled. He had announced his intent to kill, and now he had failed. And failed murder is a louder crime than murder itself. Failure taught him one truth. The sea cannot be trusted. But blades never lie. Soldiers were dispatched to her villa under cover of night. They were not clumsy sailors or frightened actors. They were executioners with orders written in steel. Agrippina greeted them as if expecting their arrival. She had scripted this moment in her mind for years. No panic, no pleas. She stood tall, a queen stripped of court but not of majesty. When the blades rose, she bared her chest and pointed to her womb. Strike here first, she commanded, her voice steady. The place where emperors are born, the place that had made him. The soldiers obeyed. Steel pierced not just flesh but the illusion of Rome's stability. The news was delivered to Nero at dawn. His mother was dead. He listened in silence, then asked if it was finished cleanly. It was. The world tilted. Official proclamations claimed she had plotted against her son. Rome nodded, because nodding is easier than dissent. But in whispers, citizens said a darker truth. If a man can kill his mother, who can ever be safe from him? Into the void Agrippina left, another woman entered, Poppaea Sabina. She was beauty sculpted into strategy, a courtesan polished into a queen. Where Agrippina had commanded, Poppaea seduced. Where Agrippina criticized, Poppaea adored. She told Nero he was not merely emperor, but artist, genius, God. She admired his voice, his verses, his fragile dreams of immortality through performance. Every word was flattery wrapped in silk, and Nero, starving for worship, devoured it. Her presence transformed the palace. Perfume drifted in halls once echoing with command. Banquets glittered with laughter too loud, jewels too heavy, smiles too false. Poppaea's charm masked the rot beneath the gold. Nero believed he had finally found a partner who saw him, who celebrated not just his crown, but his soul. He did not notice that in her reflection, his cruelty was polished, not tempered. Together, they turned Rome's throne into a mirror where Nero saw only himself and believed it was the world. The last voices of restraint began to falter. Burrus, the stern commander, died. Some whispered of poison, others of fate, but all agreed restraint died with him. Seneca, the philosopher, requested retirement, retreating into letters that advised endurance but abandoned influence. Without them, the empire lost its balance. No more leash, no more brake, no more hand steadying the wheel. Nero was free. Free to indulge every impulse, free to confuse desire with destiny. He declared himself Rome's first artist emperor, staged competitions where he always won, demanded applause that could not be denied. Ministers who hesitated vanished. Senators who frowned found their names erased. Rome felt the change like a storm rolling in, heavy, inevitable, electric with danger. Citizens whispered prayers while watching plays they did not dare criticize. Soldiers stood straighter, not out of pride, but out of fear of being noticed. Nero had shed his tutors, his guardians, his mother. He was alone now with his appetites. And appetites, once unchained, do not sleep. It began where flames always begin. In the quiet corner, no one watches. A storage house, dry as prayer, caught a spark that should have died small and didn't. The wind rose from the Tiber, took the ember in its teeth, and ran. A line of shops turned into a fuse. The fuse found a city stacked like kindling. Tiles burst like thrown plates. Doorways became furnaces. Families staggered out carrying gods wrapped in cloth and watched the gods ignite in their arms. Men climbed rooftops to bucket the flames, then found the rooftops moving under their feet, shingles letting go like panicked birds. By midnight, Rome sounded like a city speaking in one voice, panic pitched to a single note. Across the river, a silhouette stood still on a hill and listened, as if the city were an instrument that finally played loud enough. Dawn did not arrive. It was escorted in by a glow that refused to fade.
Did Nero sing?
Rumor said so. And rumor always chooses the melody that fits its grief. They pictured him on a height, robed in gold, trying harmonies against the sound of collapse. He descended among the ashes with gestures choreographed to resemble pity. He promised rebuilding, measured streets, marble that would not burn, aqueducts like veins returning lifeblood to charred limbs. But a burned city needs more than blueprints. It needs a culprit. Hope demands architecture. Rage demands a face. Nero was too clever to offer his own. He pointed instead to a stubborn sect who refused the empire's gods and refused to pretend about it. They burned what they despise, he suggested, and the suggestion spread faster than sparks on a summer cloth. The crowd, starving for a shape to hate, found one. In the alleys, men practiced new prayers with old stones in their hands. Arrests came at dawn. The hour that makes guilt look inevitable. Doors splintered, families scattered, and the people who prayed quietly were hauled into daylight for the crime of not pretending. Nero staged punishments as if commissioning frescoes. Some were sewn into skins and thrown to dogs. Some were nailed to wood and left to argue with the sun. Some were covered in pitch, mounted on posts, and lit as torches to make the imperial gardens glow. Guests strolled under the human chandeliers and debated the balance of justice and necessity. The way diners discuss spices while ignoring the recipe's origin. Some wept and called the weeping treason. Some cheered and called the cheering duty. Most did both and called it Rome. Nero watched the flames illuminate his paths and mistook spectacle for solution. But fire that solves a problem teaches you to love fire. And fire always wants more. By week's end, even the faithful who clapped began to smell what applause tries to hide. Where smoke had drifted, foundations appeared. Architects sketched a palace that would kneel the sun, the Domus Aurea, a house so golden, daylight would feel like a servant. Walls learned to pretend they were meadows. Ceilings learned to move like obedient skies. Dining rooms learned to rotate so that guests never saw the same world twice. A lake flooded where neighborhoods had been. Glassy water mirrored a face Rome could not escape. Taste, courtiers breathed, and learned how to pronounce the word with their throats closed. Nero walked the halls with ownership so complete it passed for innocence. He believed that beauty could erase memory the way a tide erases footprints. But beauty, built on grief, smells like perfume poured over smoke. You can't wash it off. You can only get used to it. Outside the gates, the city rebuilt itself without music. Inside, Nero pressed a hidden lever and watched the ceiling rain petals until the guests coughed. Somewhere between the third and fourth shower, admiration discovered a new expression: endurance. The stage never betrayed him. It didn't argue, didn't count corpses, didn't ask where the money came from. So he chose it over Rome. He competed in contests no judge dared judge, recited lines no critic dared critique, and accepted crowns that lay heavy on heads not used to honest weight. He toured Greece, chasing applause he could trust. He had paid for it in advance. Crowds roared on schedule, medals stacked like coins. Rome waited like a wife listening to laughter through a door. In the mirror, he saw not a ruler gone wrong, but a genius wrongly judged. He told himself the empire needed art as medicine, and he was the doctor who insisted on the dose. Meanwhile, taxes learned to gnaw, provinces learned to doubt, the guard learned to mark time without music. An emperor can survive cruelty longer than he can survive insignificance. When the cheers finally faded, he realized the one audience he could not bribe had taken its seats: the legions. Whispers returned to Rome like a migrating season. Names traveled mouth to ear in corridors where oil lamps smoked and senators pretended not to notice the soot. Piso's circle gathered around a single idea: that the empire could be sung back to sanity if the singer lost his stage. The plot was a lattice of courtesies, handshakes that lasted one heartbeat too long, letters folded twice instead of thrice, invitations written in ink that looked tired of lying. Conspiracies always think themselves elegant until chance trips them by the ankle. A freedman spoke at the wrong time, to the wrong man, with the right fear. The guard listened, then wrote their own script. Masks fell. Doors opened. The city remembered the sound of sandals running to obey a warrant. Arrests flowered across Rome with the obscene beauty of a plague in spring. Some confessed like men who wanted to control the narrative of their ending. Others denied the sun at noon and learned darkness quickly. Nero read the lists with the concentration of a composer studying silence. Each name removed was a note he never wanted to hear again. Each execution, a bar line. The city applauded, then swallowed. It had clapped for safety and discovered that safety sometimes means fewer voices than a decent conversation requires. By week's end, the emperor felt lighter, and Rome felt smaller. Paranoia had done its arithmetic. It always subtracts.
The letter arrived like a velvet guillotine. Polite, elegant, soaked in implication, die well and quickly. Seneca, Rome's conscience in exile, received it without flinching. His villa grew still. The lamps flickered with the knowledge of what came next. He dressed in philosopher's calm, a robe, a razor, and the ghost of a lesson. Friends gathered. Grief sharpened their words. But Seneca? He floated above it all, already halfway to myth. He opened his veins like a signature. Slow, deliberate, irreversible. Blood curled down his arms in patient loops, a final argument made in red. The bath steamed around him, as if Rome itself was trying to fog over the horror. He coughed. He quoted. Then he collapsed. More silence than man. Outside, messengers waited like accountants of death. Inside, dignity tried to prove itself immortal. Nero read the report and blinked. No tremor, no pause, nothing learned. He had silenced a voice, not erased a wound. But Nero never understood wounds, only noise. She died in a room too small for history. One shout, one strike, one silence. The child inside her died with a question. How do you mourn someone who never took a breath? Poppaea had once been Rome's mirror. Beautiful, curated, terrifying. Now she was Rome's bruise, purple and spreading. Servants cleaned, not out of duty, but to erase memory. They scrubbed until their palms bled and still smelled iron in the walls. Nero ordered fragrances, music, dancers. Rome choked on roses and silence. The palace wore perfume, like a mask that sweated grief underneath. He replaced her with a shadow, a woman shaped like memory, but made of theater. She wore Poppaea's name like a costume. The city pretended not to notice the seams. Nero no longer spoke of love. He issued decrees and watched them drown in echo. His eyes, once wild with ambition,
now shimmered with glassy absence. He had killed his mother. Now, his child and lover. The gods remained silent, but the empire began to whisper. Who does he have left to destroy but us? From the north came a ripple. Vindex raised his banner not in poetry but in math. Rome's debits no longer balanced its delusions. Galba, old and cold-eyed, sniffed the wind and smelled opportunity. His sword had rusted, but not forgotten the weight of power. Legions calculated futures like merchants. Loyalty was a commodity, and Nero's currency was crashing. One by one, standards turned. Marches began. Nero screamed into scrolls in silence. Proclamations thundered, then sputtered. Promises cracked under the weight of disbelief. The Praetorian Guard smelled the end before Rome did. They weighed Nero's fate in silver and betrayal, and found the latter paid faster. In the alleys, Rome learned stillness. People stood very still, the way statues do when lightning approaches. Somewhere behind palace walls, a locked door creaked open. Not metaphor, not rumor, just a way out. The Senate, mute for a decade, rediscovered its tongue. It spat a single verdict: public enemy. The scroll hit the marble like thunder. Nero's name, unblessed, unkinged, unneeded. He called for his Praetorians. They responded with echoes. Their loyalty had expired at the same hour his relevance did. He fled, or tried to. Jewels jangled against desperation. His robes caught on fear. He dressed like a god and moved like a beggar. In the streets, citizens watched as if at a tragic play. The fall of a liar. But this time, there was no applause. Rome shouted, not in cheers, but in laughter. The kind that sounds like justice disguised as cruelty. Nero heard it, and for the first time, understood what silence used to protect him from. The villa was too quiet. Dust hung like judgment. Outside, hoofbeats. Inside, trembling loyalty pretending to be resolve. Nero, once wrapped in laurels and incense, now clung to the walls like a fugitive. "Who will weep for me?" he asked. The silence replied with a kindness so soft it cut. Not even Rome's dirt would mourn him. He considered poison, then a blade, then the idea of nothingness. Everything he had once inflicted returned as options. He asked for a moment alone. The room agreed. It had always been the only honest thing left. When they returned, they brought not orders, but a whisper. Do it yourself. The empire was watching, and mercy had missed its cue. The dagger hovered, as if afraid of history. Nero's hand trembled, unsure of authorship. Another's hand steadied it. Betrayal, once again, proved the most intimate gesture. The blade opened his throat like a curtain. No encore followed. Blood spilled. Not royal, not divine, just warm and mortal. It soaked into soil that had already buried better men. "What an artist dies in me," he whispered. Rome didn't answer. Rome was already turning the page. The Senate read the death notice and responded with silence. The kind that follows relief, not grief. Rome took a breath. Not joyful, but alive. And alive was enough. He mistook applause for authority and theater for statecraft. He burned trust faster than the city burned, then tried to rebuild both with marble and music. He killed the woman who made him, erased the heir who mirrored him, and performed love until even love left the room. In the end, the empire taught him the lesson he had taught it, that people can become scenery. The difference was simple. He finally stood where the scenery stands. Rome survived the fire more easily than it survived being treated as an audience. Flames are honest. Narcissism is not. Remember Nero not for the song he may have sung above the burning, but for the silence that followed. A silence full of work, grief, and the dangerous relief of an empty stage. The darkest stories are never just history. They are warnings. This is savage justice, dark empire. Continue the descent.